Hey there, welcome back. We got another match race here. I'm not sailing this one, so I'm going to do some commentating on two other boats, which will allow me to speak a little bit more because there's going to be a little bit less concentration on my end, which will be nice. Let's start the race between the two of them. It's Ed against GianSAiL. All right, let's just get on to GianSAiL, I suppose. So, welcome to the channel. My name's Remy, and I do a few different things. I actually live stream on Twitch on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8 a.m. until noon Pacific time. So if you're free on those days and you feel like coming to watch, hang out with me live on Twitch, you're more than welcome to join. Also, my wife and I travel around the island where I live on Thursdays, and we take some video footage of some hikes and some different things around. That are, you know, some interesting things around where we live, and I post those on YouTube as well, so you're more than welcome to check that out. If you do enjoy the content and you like the channel, all the power to you to follow and subscribe and click that bell, because that really helps us out. That's how YouTubers grow. That's the biggest sort of like the biggest thank you can give for our content creation. So you know, all the help's appreciated. Anyway, they're crossing the line at the 4-minute mark. Let's get the time up. So they've crossed the line. They're now in the starting area here. So GianSAiL has complete rights over Ed, so Ed's going to have to avoid him, because Gian is on starboard and Ed was on port. Ed tacks. They're going to be battling in this this sort of a vicinity here until the timer gets down to 0, and then they're allowed to cross the line and start down the course. So right now they're just battling for position. It looks like Ed is actually in a better position than Gian. The goal of the pre-start is to take this side here. You really want to start on this side. So the fact that Ed is now crossing over to get to the committee side is really good for him. So that's great. The fact that Gian started on the committee side of the line meant that Gian was defending. He was defending the line, trying to make sure that Ed could not do this, what he's doing now, sailing over towards the side. So Ed's got enough distance between him that he could come back onto starboard and give Gian some issues. And let's just see what happens. Looks like he is going to jibe and try and come back onto starboard. There we go, comes around. And now Gian has to avoid. Gian has a lot of speed, so he may pass in front. With that jibe, Ed slowed down quite a lot. And now Gian is able to pass in front as well. So you can see that they're kind of battling for this right side of the line. 2 minutes and 15 seconds left. The pre-start is definitely the most exciting part of the race. After that 5 minutes is finished and they start heading upwind, it gets a little, that was close. It gets a little bit more of a tactical strategy game rather than reaction-based type intense sort of moments like these. There was a very, very close incident there, but nobody called a penalty. If one boat decides that the other boat has broken a rule, they can protest that other boat. So you'll see a P that gets written in the chat, but there hasn't been anything written yet, so both boats are okay with the way that the other is sailing. Now, this is the point where they're going to start eventually wanting to jibe and start coming around towards that line, because they only have a minute and 10 seconds to get to the line. So here they come. Now, the boat leeward, which means you can think about it like this. See how these boats are leaning over? That's because the wind is hitting them to the right side, or their starboard side. The boat that's being leaned on, so in this case GianSAiL would be being leaned on by Ed. This is the leeward position, and it's actually the position of control. So it's a very interesting start when you get quite close like this. I mean, they're actually not very close now, so that rule doesn't matter. But right now they're both just trying to slow down because they're a bit early. If Ed can keep this lateral distance between them, Okay, Gian's tacking. Now this is going to get very interesting. Let's see what happens. 18 seconds to the line. Gian has to tack. He's going to have no speed. Ed is going to go behind him, get into the leeward position. So now he's taking leeward position. He has now he has control. Ed has control because he's the boat being leaned on, making Gian tack back with no speed. In my opinion, Ed is winning this pre-start now. Ed has all of the speed. Gian is very slow. Ed crosses the line first. He will tack. And the race has begun. So now they're going to sail all the way up to that buoy. And they have to go in a zigzag pattern. So they have to go like this, boom, 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 boom. They can't just sail straight up to it. Otherwise, the wind is not helping and they'll just go backwards. But as I said, the race gets it slows down a lot now, unless there's an intense tacking battle. This is a tack from Gian. Let's see. Ed will now lee bow tack. So in this position right here, Gian is in the shadow, so he has to tack away as he's doing. And typically what you'll find is there's a tacking battle that starts to happen here where they continue to tack back and forth into one another to try and gain slight advantages. Gian comes back again. And Ed will try and maintain control by attacking right on top of his nose to force him into the shadow or like less wind. And Gian has to tack away because if he doesn't, then he starts slowing down a lot and Ed will just take off. So you can see on the map where they are. That red line is the start line. It's also the finish line. And they've got to come all the way up here in a tacking battle to the top mark, sail back down to this gate. They can choose either side of this gate to go around, come back up again, around the mark, and down to the finish line. Each race takes about 20 minutes, roughly, plus the pre-start, which is 5 minutes. So I think there will be some edited footage here. I'm going to cut out some, if it gets quite boring and they start to just sail in one direction and there's no more tacks, then I'll edit out that footage and we'll come back at the top mark and see where they're at. We'll come back at the gate and so forth, just so there isn't a whole bunch of dead footage in the video. All right, they're parting ways. Let's flip over to Ed. Now you can see the lateral distance between them now is growing quite substantially. This must mean that Ed has a better angle, because Ed really doesn't want this gap. He really doesn't want that lateral gap because it gives Gian a chance to have a better angle coming back. It's because the direction of the wind constantly changes, and it gives the angle preference to one side of the tack, either a starboard tack or a port tack. It gives you preference or a benefit. So when you're the boat behind, what you're really looking to do is increase that gap. You can see off in the distance, that's the top mark. That's the buoy they're going to have to go around there. So not a whole bunch gained for Gian and not a whole bunch lost, it looks like. Maybe half a boat length. Ed's definitely in control of the match. I think there was a mistake from Gian initially tacking onto port about 15 seconds, 18 seconds before they entered the line, because Ed was able to get behind him and then force him to tack again, which just killed his speed completely. And that's how he's ended up in this position. So the pre-start is so important. If you lose the pre-start even just by half a boat length, that boat length can increase if the boat in front can keep you in shadow for the upwind leg. By the time you get to the top mark, you're going to be looking at 4 or 5 boat lengths behind, and that's really difficult to come back from. Really, really difficult. Looks like Ed is on the ley line. So what the ley line is there is an angle that comes up this way off of the buoy and off of this way off of the buoy. And one is the starboard ley line, which is here, and one is the port ley line, which is here. Basically, if Ed was to be over here somewhere, he would be well over the ley line and at a very bad angle coming in, and he'd lose a lot of distance to the mark. So he would GianSAiL would gain a huge amount, and so you do want to make sure that your angles are correct when you're coming into the top mark. Otherwise, you're going to be too far under, and then you'll have to tack over here somewhere and then round it, or you're going to be way too far over and you're going to be sailing a really silly angle coming over. So you want to make sure that you're in the relative proximity of the ley line when you do tack to come back. It gets a little bit more intricate when you start talking about 2 boats racing against each other because, for example, now Ed is definitely on the ley line. He's in a good position. However, the way that it works tacking is you lose speed, right? So he's losing speed very close to the mark as he's coming around this way. And it's a bit difficult to take speed again quickly as he's rounding. So actually Gian is in a better position because he's going to come up this way and then he's going to tack. And he's going to get his speed in this area before he starts rounding the mark. So he's got a bit of a, almost like a slingshot around the mark, where Ed is going to be more like a slug rounding the mark. And that's something that a lot of guys use. They don't like to be right on the ley line. They like to be a little bit low where Gian is right now. So it's actually a good play from Gian. He's going to gain not much, like quarter boat length or something like that. And Ed actually had a nice rounding, so it might even be less than a quarter. So when they do round, these big sails come up, and the wind hits them from the back and fills them up. They're called spinnakers, and they're going to run all the way down the course with their spinnakers full. You go a lot faster on the downwind than you do on the upwind. You still have to go in some sort of a Z pattern. You can't go straight down. But the angles are much narrower. You're not quite sailing like in a Z pattern like this. You're more sailing in a Z pattern like this. So they're going to get to the gate a lot quicker than they got to that top mark. This dark area right here is a puff. So there's actually more wind in there. It's actually shrinking right now. So neither of them are going to get that. That glass kind of whitish looking circle back here is the lull, which means there's less wind. So you never want to be in there. That's kind of like a dead zone. If you're in there, you better hope that the opponent is also in there with you. Look, Gian's going for a jibe. So the other important thing here is that well, just a terminology sort of thing is when you're sailing downwind like this with your spinnaker up, and you decide to change direction and go to the other tack or jibe. This is all jibing. The terminology for changing directions like this is it's jibing. When you're sailing upwind, it's just tacking. You're doing exactly the same thing. You're crossing over the wind and sailing on the opposite tack, but one is a jibe, which is downwind, and one is a tack, which is upwind. Some other terminology like starboard is the right side of the boat, port is the left side of the boat. You have your bow and your stern. Your bow, you can think of like when you're bowing to someone, you're bowing forward, which is the front side of the boat. So if we zoom in here, so this is your bow, and this is your stern. And then you've got starboard and port sides. I'm pretty sure that this portion of the boat, like the very side of the boat, is called the beam reach, but that's irrelevant. This is your mainsail. You got your spinnaker and your mast. It goes all the way up, holds your mainsail on. And then you've got your boom back here. And this pole here sticks out to the front. It's also a boom, but it's called the spinnaker boom. And then you see all these like these are metal wiring sort of cords, and they attach onto the mast. But they actually attach onto the spreaders. These things here are called spreaders that indirectly attach onto the mast, and it kind of holds everything together. But these things are called what is it? Shrouds? No, rigging. These are rigging. Oops. Yeah, these are rigging. And it's what kind of holds the whole boat together. It's kind of neat. And then you've got your crew here. A couple of wheels, bunch of rope, and it's like this. This boat is called the ACC, or the America's Cup class. And in real life, these are massive. This is about I think these were about 65 feet or 75 feet long. Like they're big boats. It doesn't look it in this, but I mean, if you compare it to the size of the committee boat, which is, a relatively good-sized powerboat there. Oh, where is she? There she is. Then we get back onto Ed. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to really gauge the reception. But here they are. They're coming up to this gate here, which you can see on the map. Okay, this is the gate. And you can choose which buoy you want to go around. They have to round to the inside. Ed is choosing the starboard buoy, and this is the port buoy, because this is actually looking up the course. So everything to the left side of the course is the port stuff, and everything to the right side is the starboard stuff. All right, Ed's rounding. Gian's probably 12 seconds behind or something like that if we look at the splits here. 11:36 rounding for Ed. So 11 minutes, 36 seconds into the race, he rounded the gate. And Gian may be a bit further than 12 seconds. Let's see. 11:50, so 14, just over 14 seconds back. The race isn't over. 14 seconds back, he can still come, he can still do it. But what Gian really wants to do right now is to create as much lateral space as possible between the two boats. Ed's coming back to make sure that lateral distance doesn't get too great. And Gian is now hoping for the wind to shift or to change direction so that he has a good tack onto port and a good direction into the wind coming back to Ed. That's what Gian's really hoping for. Both of the boats are sitting in a puff at the moment. And both will be leaving almost simultaneously. Ed will have it for a little bit longer. The race is definitely not over. Ed's still in relatively good control. But let's remember that 14-second split and see what the difference is when they get to the top mark. All right, Gian has decided. Oh, okay. So Gian must have had a lift there, or sorry, a knock. There's lifts and knocks. Don't worry so much about what those mean. But there was obviously a wind shift that favored both boats to tack, and it was big enough that Ed decided not to try and close the gap, but to tack with the change in direction of the wind. So both boats right now are on port tack, and the port tack is basically defined by the wind hitting the port side of the boat. Okay, so because the boat's pushed over to the starboard side, that means all of the wind is hitting this portion, which is the left side, which is the port side, so they're on port tack. All right, so coming to the top mark. We've got Ed in a very similar position that he was in coming up to the first top mark, where he's going to be a little slow rounding because he's right on the ley line, whereas Gian is making sure to stay out of the shadow and staying away from Ed, and will have slightly more speed coming around when he does tack onto port. It doesn't look like Gian's gained a whole bunch of distance here onto Ed, but let's see what the rounding time is. So we had 14 seconds coming off of the gate, and let's have a look at the splits here. So we've got 17:38, so 17 minutes 38 seconds into the race. Ed rounded. I think he's gained. He's definitely gained. And 17:50. So he's gained 2 seconds. Well, almost 3. Looks like almost 3 seconds he's gained from the gate. So he's definitely closed the gap. He's looking at about 11 seconds. And this is the last leg, so he's going to really have to work. Now how he works is he jibes. You have to jibe, 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 back and forth. That's the only way that he's going to slow Ed down. He just has to keep jibing and taking speed and trying to get better quality jibes than Ed has, taking Ed's wind wherever he can, putting Ed in the shadow, whatever he can do. But if he just sits in one direction and just sails all the way, then they're both going to be exactly the same speed and no one's going to gain or lose anything. So Gian has to go, 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 jibe, 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 jibe. You can see on the map, this is where they are. And this is where they're going to right here. That the red line is the finish. And you can see we're at about the 19-minute mark, so this race will be about 23 minutes, roughly. All right. Now, there are shadows that spread, away from the boats, and it's difficult to show you exactly where those are. But I can tell you that Gian is in a good position here. He's in the best possible position that he can be at this point in time. Not so much for right now, but when they jibe to come back, because they have to go to this finish line right here. When they jibe to come back, Gian, it may be possible that Gian has the wind of Ed, like reducing Ed's wind by maybe 3 knots or something like that. Okay, Ed is coming over to defend that position. They're on the starboard side of the course, and I say starboard because I know this. Oops, I know this looks like left, but it's actually the right side of the course because we're looking backwards at the moment. So they're on starboard side. Gian is trying desperately to take the wind of Ed. You can see the flutter of the mainsail a little bit there. Hard to say whether he has it. I don't think that he does. You see any fluttering in the sails of Ed right now? No, yeah, there's a little bit of mainsail movement here. You'll be able to see it if we look like this. Check out this mainsail movement. Yeah, definitely some wind being taken. Gian decides to jibe, so he's not taking the wind anymore, but he might have had it for a little ways. I don't think he's going to have enough time to catch Ed. The gap's too big. As long as Ed defends like this, he should be okay. So Ed just making sure that the lateral distance stays small between them, and he's just defending. Gian is trying to create that lateral distance. Gian wants to be somewhere over here or somewhere over here, but Ed, as the leader, should not be letting that happen. I don't think Ed's too worried, so he's just sailing straight for the line, and it looks like it's a big well done for Ed. Gian is a very good sailor, so I'm kind of proud of Ed for taking this match. Really well sailed. Really good pre-start from Ed, and he just held on the whole way. Like they're coming into the finish right now. Set it up here. That's the finish line, and they're coming in to cross it. Yeah, about the 23-minute mark. And there's the well done there. Very well done, Edwin. And he's crossing the line right now. And let's see the splits here. 22:38 to 22:44, 12 seconds, nothing gained on the downwind for Gian. And that's it, folks.